It's 1.2. We need to send them a proposal of where we should be. And then let us know. So, should I just say that we can do around €50 a month? So that's like 5%. Like 300.
Hello, hello. Hey guys. That time of the week again. So we'll give it a few minutes, guys, and then we'll jump into things. I think I'm gonna give everybody about 2-3 minutes here. Yeah, poor Bjorn has been, I mean, the guy had a winning streak though of I don't know how many weeks in a row, so I don't know if anybody's actually beaten that streak yet. It's gonna be tough to beat, I think. It's like the, it's gotta be in the Guinness Book of World Records for first AMA visitor or something. Still have a bit of the coronavirus, I think, but I'm fighting. Yeah. I don't think I'll be one of the 2% that dies, so we should be good. Should be good. Growing stronger, so yeah. Hopefully by next week. Next week, guys, I'll be in Montenegro giving on Monday, Tuesday, giving a workshop to the Capital Market Authority and the Central Bank of Montenegro about using stable coins for settlement with the central bank. So the towel. It's not a towel, it's a scarf. Towel. There you go. Can you see it? There we go. It says, yeah, I'm growing stronger. Yeah, I can't take credit for the increased volume, but thank you. I will, thanks for that. Yeah, increased volume, well, restructuring of tiers, restructuring of liquidity, bringing in market makers leads to exactly what everybody thought it would lead to, which is more volume. I probably will, well, I definitely will wear a CoinMetro t-shirt to the CSD workshop, that's for sure. I can guarantee you that. I don't know if it'll be this one or not. All right, let's get started. We'll get started with the agenda, guys, then we'll roll back in here like we always do. How much volume do we need? Well, it depends, right? Because obviously we have LMAX still making volume on the major pairs, are making on the major pairs. We have to pay them liquidity fees that are higher than our normal maker bonus in some instances. We also obviously have that maker bonus, so it depends on how takers are getting the liquidity from the market. So 3 million, if you take 3 million and assume it's 0.1%, right, that comes to what, 3,000 a day, which would roughly make it to our current burn rate. But our burn rate's going to increase as soon as we bring on marketing and new developers and everything like that, which means our burn rate would be about 70%, 80% higher than it is right now, from 100K up to roughly 170, 180. So you'd have to double that. But then you have to understand that most of the time there's a maker on the other side. So you'd have to quadruple that. But the vast majority, income comes from many other things beside volume, right? We make €1, for example. We don't make €1, we make income on every deposit. And think about this, if someone buys a 0.01 Bitcoin, but uses a SEPA payment to make their deposit, we actually make way more money on the SEPA deposit than we do on the volume. So there's other ways we make money. Margin, we make interest on the basically margin that's given on the margin platform. It's much more than we make on the actual trading for the most part. So it's not necessarily, that's why when we talk about figures, somebody mentioned in Telegram, we don't necessarily talk about we need this much volume. It's this many active clients, because if we know that the average active client uses these services, then we can fully understand what we make per client. And it doesn't necessarily correlate to volume. We could have the same volume we have today and be profitable depending on how that volume is being generated and how people are actually, maybe not be profitable, but we could be significantly more in the green, towards the green side, or let's say towards the black side in accounting, depending on how that money was flowing in and what additional services those clients were using that didn't necessarily tie to volume. Right. So, all right, I'll take this these two questions, then we'll start. Any word on what you might see increased margin lending, and when we might see increased margin lending? We're working on that. Obviously, it makes sense for us to do that as quick as possible. So, I can't give you a date right now, but it's something that's definitely on the top of our list. Serious question: when would you not say that increased volume is simply in line with general crypto markets behavior? Simple exchange increased volume. It has something to do with it, sure. But if we didn't have market makers on board and we hadn't adjusted spreads as we did, or not, we didn't really. The adjusted spreads was an indirect benefit from us basically taking a VWAP price top of book and then scaling it down to 5 tiers instead of just 1. But that combined with market makers, hadn't we done that, we wouldn't see such an increase in volume. So, but yes, it definitely has something to do with it, that's for sure. Will CM participate in CoinGecko's trust evaluation, which would put it a lot higher on their exchange scoreboard? We're willing to participate 100%. I'm not 100% sure what that is. I hope it's actually something that makes sense, not like CoinMarketCap's nonsense that they were going to try and clean up their data, which they didn't. Yeah, we'd be willing to participate for sure. Okay, so let's start with the agenda, guys. If you haven't been here before, my name is Kevin Murcko. I'm CEO here at CoinMetro. And I do this every Friday. We call it This Week in Crypto. And this is how it functions. We have 4 things on our agenda. Agenda 1 is market news. I have 10 pieces of market news correlated. I think that's how they say curated in the South in the US. Correlated. Sometimes I say stupid shit, and I apologize in advance. So the first item on the agenda is market news. I take 10 pieces of market news that correlated over the last week, which basically means that members of our elite Telegram group found some market news they thought was interesting, voted on it, and now I get to comment on it. So I make a comment on each piece of news, usually about a minute each, 10, 12 minutes, 15 minutes tops, and we move on to Kevin Explains Crypto, where also those same people vote on what I'm going to explain this week. And every week I have either a word, a phrase, or whatever that has something to do with crypto, and I explain what it means. Pretty simple. Then we go into live Q&A. Ask me anything here on YouTube, right over in this general area. And ask me anything literally does mean ask me anything. I usually answer everything as long as I see it and it's not blocked for some reason. And then Reddit questions. We have a couple Reddit questions this week, so I'll probably cover Reddit questions before we come into the Ask Me Anything part of the show. Let's get started with the news and then we'll move on. So number 1 on the list of 10 this week, Prime Trust to arrange banking for customers of Blockquake crypto exchange. So Blockquake, some new crypto exchange in beta. I guess who cares? Prime Trust is generally a custody agent. They say banking here, but you can't actually do banking unless you're a bank. So it's not actually banking, but what they're doing is they're providing, instead of a client depositing directly with the exchange, their fiat or their crypto, they deposit it with a custody agent, and that custody agent basically alerts the brokerage credits the account. Not necessarily banking. Those are trust services. But anyway, I guess this is probably included because people are wondering why we don't use a service like this. I don't know much about Prime Trust. I know several other custody agents that I've known since the FX days, which are very large custody agents where people can deposit, let's say, fiat currency in trust. The problem sometimes with trust agents is that fiat currency we may need to move, let's say, to liquidity providers, for example. and that can become onerous and slow, and that can slow down our business operations. Here, for the most part, the exchanges that are making use of these services more than likely don't care about that because it's not part of their business flow. Why? Because they're either market making their own client book, so they don't have to move those assets anywhere, or they simply don't understand the implications of having money stuck for a day or two or three, where you have T3, D3 settlement from a trust account into an exchange, into a liquidity provider's account, which basically completely screws the way that you're able to maintain margin or maintain credit or maintain your ability to keep on pricing through that market maker. So that's the reason why we don't use those type of services. I think those services are going to become better and better over time, especially with the implementation of smart tokens and stable coins, when more of the more institutional liquidity providers start to allow the movements of deposits with that type of asset. Number 2 on the list of 10, Switzerland to require ID for crypto exchange transactions over 1K. So we always talk about here that, people are so convinced, or they were convinced just a year ago, 2 years ago, that no KYC, no AML would ever touch crypto because crypto is awesome, and everybody that dealt in crypto is awesome, and the governments suck, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And slowly but surely that has changed, and now even Switzerland now is saying, over 1K. I can almost guarantee you that that's going to change and get more stricter over time. Now, I made an explanation in Telegram, if you guys were sitting in Telegram just a while ago, because someone came in and asked a few, good questions about why we didn't make deposits without KYC. One of the main reasons we don't do that is that, look, normally, now this is an example of a government setting a threshold. Great. So if you're in Switzerland, that means under 1K, you're not necessarily obliged to take. Does that mean as a company you shouldn't do it? Maybe not. Why? Well, let's put it this way. Let's say a company like CoinMetro, right? Let's take our volumes we have right now, right? Let's say somewhere 5 to 700,000 euros a day in volume, which obviously on the grand scope of things isn't huge. And the active amount of clients that are doing that volume, let's assume it's 700 for 700K, right? It's an average 1,000 per client, right? Now that's 700 clients, right? Now let's assume that out of those under 1,999 euro deposits, for example, or Swiss francs or whatever, let's assume you have 70 people. Let's make the numbers easy. 70 people that make questionable deposits that you don't screen initially. Now what does that mean? That means 10% of your active clients are now trading with money that is questionable. Now, the government may say that you don't have to screen those guys, but I guarantee your banking partners, and not just your banking partners, but eventually the government and especially the government entities you're supposed to report these type of transactions to, will come down on you and say, how is it that 10% of your entire client base, is involved in scams, human trafficking and drugs? And you go, well, you guys said we didn't have to screen anything under 1,000. And I go, yeah, well, you should have noticed a pattern, and you're obliged to actually look into these things. So even when governments set those thresholds, let me tell you that it still makes sense internally for a company that wants to protect itself and its clients. Because let me give you a scenario. When that happens, and that's not an if, when it happens that a company then gets screened and they're found to be negligent in one way, shape, or form, guess what happens? Their wallets, those hot wallets, cold wallets they control, as well as their bank accounts, gets frozen by the government. And what happens when that gets frozen? There's no withdrawals. So even though you're a client that's cool, clean, and whatever, and you happen to be using this exchange because you could get onboarded immediately instead of taking 5 minutes to upload a document, what happens is that your funds get frozen too. And those investigations can last months, but they can last years. So imagine having your funds frozen for 3 to 5 years because simply the exchange was too lazy or thought that, let's try to make a little more money a little more quickly and not apply these rules internally. Okay, number 3, that took way longer than a minute. So number 3 on the list of 10, let's speed it up. Samsung and Salesforce plow millions into blockchain company. So a company called Digital Asset trying to make a smart contract platform, smart contract standard. It makes, look, you'll notice a lot of companies, and this has started to happen over time. I mentioned that every one of these companies was going to have some type of blockchain token, et cetera. Over time, it just made sense. You're seeing these companies plow money into this technology, small money for them, by the way. 35 million, I think they're talking about here. Still small money for these companies because they don't want to miss out. They may lose on this investment and make money on another, but they will plow money over the next 3 to 5 years into blockchain, tokenization. Why? Because they realize it's the future. They just don't know why it's the future yet. Here, they see smart contracts. They see Ethereum having problems with scalability. They think, well, maybe these guys will become the standard, maybe not for the entire industry, but what if you're the standard for smart contracts just for the automobile industry, or just for the aluminum industry, or just for the logistics industry, or whatever? That's a huge business. So they're taking the risk. Doesn't necessarily mean that company is going to do something special. It simply means that the industry as a whole is becoming a hot topic for investors, and that's a good thing. Number 4 on the list of 10, BTSE crypto exchange moves headquartered to offshore tax paradise. So let's see how long BTSE can stay stable. Look, I know from personal experience how it is to go through licensing processes when licensing is already way too cumbersome. It's not cumbersome yet for crypto. It was cumbersome for FX. We made the decision to go into Vanuatu. What that did, now we operated fine in Vanuatu for years, my FX business, but you know what it did do is it made things extremely difficult like banking, right? And it makes other things extremely difficult. And eventually you get placed into a box, makes you hard to operate, hard to do things that your competitors can do. So it's too early in crypto to start moving to offshore paradises when it's still easy to operate within a regulated sphere, and it's simply going to lead to them not being able to scale. That's it. Number 5 on the list of 10, Trondheim City and IOTA gear up for its smart city development towards sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goals, part of, I think, the UN. They have a list of sustainable development goals. That's great. Smart cities, also kind of cool. I think all this stuff is really, really stage 0 right now. Smart city sounds great, but to have a smart city, you need smart inhabitants. And I hate to say this, but even if the city was the smartest city in the world, it probably wouldn't function the way it was supposed to function because the inhabitants, well, wouldn't live up to par. So anyway, I think it's cool. I think it's cool to read about. I don't see, in all honesty, smart cities really becoming the norm anytime within my lifetime. Now that might only be 30 or 40 years from now, so we're not talking about a huge jump. Eventually, I do think this is going to happen, but we have lots and leaps and bounds to do to get there. But it's cool that these technologies are starting, though I don't think it's going to become this mega industry over the course of the next short term here. Number 6 on the list of 10, why security token offerings are a big yawn in parts of Asia. I didn't read the article. I think I already know the answer. Answer is Asians are gamblers. Gamblers like to see big, quick gains. They love token sales. They love them because why? You lost 99% of the time, but when you won, it was 1,000x. In security tokens, again, which are tokenized securities, you're basically buying into plain vanilla stocks, bonds, etc. A plain vanilla stock and bond, yes, you can pick a winner like an Amazon or an Apple, and over the course of a decade go up by hundreds, maybe even thousands of percent. It's possible. But the vast majority of these things are going to gain single digits every year, maybe double digits the first year, whatever, on an IPO or an IEO or whatever, but they're not as exciting. And Asians are risk takers, and they're not very good risk takers. So they like to take extraordinary risk and lose 99% of the time. So this just simply doesn't get them excited. Now, if you send them an email and say, invest 1,000 for 1,000,000x possibly, they'd probably put money in that. They'd probably lose too, that's for sure, but they'd be happy to put money in that. So that's why it's a yawn for them. But on the whole, I think the one thing here is it's a big yawn in parts of Asia for crypto people. They are not a big yawn for people that are savvy about capital markets. They are a little off-putting to capital markets people so far because there's no infrastructure. Ding, ding, CSD, ding, ding, MTF, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When those pieces of the puzzle are in place, trust me, institutional and retail investors will be gobbling them up in Asia. Crypto people, maybe not, but crypto people, what is that, like 0.00025% of the world's population, to be quite honest? I mean, everybody says like 1%. I don't think that number is true, to be honest. I mean, out of 1% of the people I know outside of crypto, I mean, nobody invests in crypto. And I probably have a Rolodex, and I probably still have a Rolodex somewhere. If nobody knows what that is, Google it. But somewhere, I probably met or talked to 10,000 people in my lifetime. And I guarantee you way less than 1% are into crypto. And most of those people are tied to finance, to be quite honest. Number 7 on a list of 10, Circle sells retail trading app to crypto broker Voyager. Well, Circle's been kind of selling themselves in piecemeal, mainly because Circle got bought by a mainstream financial provider, and then sold, and then bought and then sold, all this. So they're just breaking themselves up. I think they want to get away from retail. Look, retail is difficult, guys. Institutional means no marketing for the most part, right? You just go out there, it's B2B sales, right? And that can be easier, right? Retail is not the easy side of the equation, but it's an underserved part. So there's a big reason to be into retail, but it also means a complete different mindset. And I think because of who owns Circle, they think they're much better suited to B2B. So institutional, so they're getting rid of the retail side, right? They're trying to sell pieces to regain some of the money they lost. So that's normal business, guys. I don't see anything odd, weird, or even noteworthy about that. Number 8 on the list of 10, North Korea is expanding its Monero mining operations, quote unquote, says report. I'd like to read that report. I didn't. Look, North Korea, a lot of things out of North Korea I think are horseshit, but on the face value of that, they definitely, well, we know they have programmers and developers on the payroll. Ding, ding. If you don't know why that's supposed to be funny, I guess you haven't been here for a while. But having said that, I think that in reality, this may or may not be true. I think it just goes to show that where countries, these countries are sanctioned. They're out of the banking system. They can't send money anywhere. They can't receive money from anywhere except for a very small amount of countries around the world. So they need to be able to move money. They need to be able to make money, et cetera. And they found ways that they can possibly make money with, free electricity, basically, because the government is the one supplying and using it. So I would say this is probably accurate. I don't think it's too surprising. What it means is that it's just going to make the rest of the world, your OFACs, your FATFs, all these guys, not like Monero even more. That's it. Number 9, let's 10. CoinNinja CEO arrested for allegedly laundering $311 million with Bitcoin privacy tools. Again, pseudo-anonymous. This is actually good news, I think, for all the regulators and banks that for years, have been saying that, Bitcoin's anonymous, and if you touch Bitcoin, we're scared because you can't track the money. Well, obviously it can. This guy used, quote unquote, Bitcoin privacy tools, was arrested with enough evidence for laundering money, which means obviously the pseudo-anonymity of Bitcoin is not enough to get, it actually makes it much more difficult to launder money than it would with cash. So I think this is a blessing in disguise, this headline. I think it's probably meant to be like a yellow headline, to get people's attention. In reality, what it tells me is that it kind of proves the point I've been telling the regulators and banks for the last year and a half, 2 years, in that you guys shouldn't be scared of Bitcoin. If I tell you I'm working with Bitcoin, you should be happy because it allows me to give you more information and gives me more information on my clients, which allows me to make sure that I'm not accepting illegal funds, which you can't do with traditional finance. Number 10 on the list of 10, NASDAQ Morgan Stanley trading bets build startup to unite crypto market price ranges. I don't even understand what the fuck that means, so I'm going to go ahead and open this link. So let's see. I love when there's the title. Unite crypto price ranges. I don't know. Let's see. Epiphany, okay, came out in stealth. Great. With a new platform targeting exchanges hampered by low liquidity. Awesome. It is emerging finances back-end tool tied to technology. Okay, when I see the word it literally has the words, let me get this. Technological advances, okay, emerging finance, off-chain, advantage, and crypto exchange all in the same sentence. So what that tells me is bullshit. But I'll continue to read just because, you guys are listening to me talk. So I figured I better have something good to say. So what scares me about this, not scares me, but what tells me a lot is, okay, NASDAQ, Morgan Stanley, and trading veterans, okay? Let me tell you what a trading veteran is on a desk. It's a guy that follows a risk parameter set by the bank to not lose money. Doesn't mean he knows how to trade. It means he knows how to move money quickly according to basically parameters that are set up by his boss. Morgan Stanley, one of the worst market makers in the history of market makers, probably lost more money market making than even JP Morgan, which is pretty shitty. And then NASDAQ, right? So NASDAQ just makes technology. I mean, they don't necessarily make that great a technology, they just make technology. So these are guys that left there to make something that supposedly provides liquidity by, quote unquote, uniting crypto market price ranges. What I think that means is that it pulls probably liquidity or quotes from many, many different exchanges to try to get one non-OTC quote, right? So it's basically aggregating quotes to try to find where liquidity sits, where there's pockets of liquidity that aren't hit because they're probably inside the spread or something along those lines, which sounds nice on paper. but in reality, probably won't do much because you need liquidity inside of those ranges to be able to aggregate it and provide more liquidity. Just aggregating doesn't actually provide liquidity. Anyway, I'll actually read more into this later, but I think suffice it to say that when tools are made for institutional players like exchanges that actually help them create a better market, there is no need to release a PR statement about that because it's B2B. And as soon as it works for one, everyone will use it, right? I could list a myriad of different companies that exist in FX that you've never heard of but that are huge, right? PrimeXM, not the best example, but just one off the top of my head. Anybody here heard of PrimeXM that isn't a trader or hasn't worked? Probably not. You know why? Because they're an institutional company that aggregates liquidity. Why would a retail guy know about that? You don't have to know about that. You don't care. If your order, you don't care as a retail client how your order gets filled at all, just that it gets filled. You don't care if it's market made. You don't care if it's in-house. You could care less. You just want your order filled, right? So why would you care about a company that's helping fill orders that you can't even open an account with because it's just a technical solution for an exchange? So the fact that it's even on CoinDesk kind of tells me that, man, well, there you go. They need the PR. Why? Because, well, maybe it doesn't work. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to jump into, let's see, Kevin explains crypto real quick, and then we'll move on to little Reddit questions, and I'll jump into the MA. So Kevin explains crypto this week. One of my favorite terms, and a term that's come up quite often in the office as of late, market makers. Right on. So this is not a crypto term per se, obviously, and to be honest, I don't know how many real market makers actually exist in crypto. I would say the number is as close to zero as you can get without being zero. So I don't, however mathematically advanced you are, you either think that number is one or it's something much smaller than that. 0 dot infinity zeros, one, or some type of abstract numeral. Anyway, so market makers. So what does market makers mean? Well, simply put, a market maker is someone who makes a market. Right? What does that mean? That means that, well, you can't have a market unless someone provides liquidity to that market, right? You need to have a seller when there's a buyer, and you need to have a buyer when there's a seller, right? If you want to buy something but nobody's selling, you can't buy it, right? If you want to sell something and nobody's buying, you can't sell it. A market maker's core job is to make sure that when there's a buyer, they are on the sell side. And when there's a seller, they're there to buy. That's it. Market makers are not there to induce price movements. They're not in there to necessarily increase volumes. They're not there to push price in one direction or the other. They're simply there to be either on the buy or sell side of an order to make sure that at the end of the day, the orders can be filled. That's what market makers do. Without market makers, there is no market. Now, outside of this explanation, understand that market makers get a bad rap. In FX, people think that there was this time, and maybe that time still exists. People go, you know what? I was trading at this exchange or at this broker, and they were running their own book, and they were trading against me. All right. In reality, someone is always trading against you. That's how markets work, right? If you're buying and your order gets filled, how do you think it's getting filled? With somebody else buying? Obviously not. Somebody else is selling into your buy or buying into your sell, which means every time you take an order, someone's trading against you. Now, what's the difference if the person trading against you is the company you're trading with or an outside party? Is there really a difference? I think that comes from the most part that people don't understand how markets work. Market makers are needed. Without somebody making a market, there's no market. Okay, let's jump into Reddit questions real quick. First one from Turarin, I think. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Hi, Kevin. When are you finally going to burn the correct amount of XCM? I remember you sold like 128 million tokens, but minted 130 plus the 200 million CoinMetro hold. We don't hold 200 million, by the way. CoinMetro reserve was 100 million, and I think 50 million went to shareholders, if I'm not mistaken. You're telling us that you need people to withdraw more XCM to external wallets for you to calculate how much you sold or something like that. No, what I was saying is that one way for us to 100% know what was actually sold and claimed is if they were all in external wallets. That obviously isn't possible because, to be honest, some people haven't, since the token sale, haven't even come back to claim their tokens. So it's theoretically impossible. But obviously, if it was possible, theoretically, then it would be very easy because we would know on chain exactly how many tokens were distributed. At the same time, you advise people not to withdraw their tokens to their own wallets. That's not necessarily advice. The point is that there's this, I would say it's a misconception in that, not your keys, not your Bitcoin, for example. I think that comes out of a complete misconception of security. Now, you can definitely argue that, look, if I'm a hacker, well, if I'm a person that steals money, because hacker just sounds so elegant, right? Like people are sitting, like I said, sitting at home in front of 19 screens, making like worms and infiltrating governments. Most hacking happens because, someone picks up a phone, calls somebody else, gets information they shouldn't have got, sends an email disguised as somebody else, gets some information they shouldn't have got, and social engineers themselves into an account. That's usually how it works. But let's just call them hackers, okay? At the end of the day, obviously, if you're a hacker, you're going to go at. It would make more sense to go after an account that has 100 million in it versus an account that has 20 euros in it. All right, but at the same time, how much money does your average person spend on their own security versus how much money does an institution spend on their own security, and how much are they monitoring it? And how much experience do they have in actually going through that security? That's one. Two, when you talk about XCM, XCM is our own token. It has no value outside of the platform, right? The only value it holds is sitting on the platform. And if something were to happen where we were to get hacked, we would simply, mint new tokens. And there's nowhere to go to actually cash out the old tokens. You could try to do it on, a decentralized exchange, great. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't affect the value of the new token either. So, leaving them on the exchange is it just kind of makes sense. I'm not saying it's advice. If people want to withdraw them, go for it. But these are two arguments that necessarily aren't made together. It's not like there was ever any advice to say, withdraw your tokens so we can get an accurate count. And by the way, don't withdraw your tokens because they're stupid. They were never said in the same breath, right? These are just two different arguments that were made for two very specific and different questions. That you happen to be putting together here. How can you not have a clear view of how much was sold during the ICO? That's a good question, and it can get quite complex. And it can get quite complex because I'll give you one example, right? So we have a database, for example, that shows orders during the token sale. Now, if you remember during the token sale, when someone submitted an order, they had a certain amount of time. I think it was at one point it was 12 hours to actually send the crypto to the address. We then shortened it, but at some point it was 12 hours, right? Now, so we have basically a number in one database that shows the amount of tokens and the amount of money we were supposed to receive. Then in certain circumstances, somebody sent less money, or they sent money 5 hours later and the exchange rate changed, which meant they got less tokens. That's another database entry, right? Now, at some point, we had an issue with one of these databases, right? Where we had, and then we had an issue to know and because this person never came to claim their tokens, or perhaps they never even logged into the platform, et cetera. So when linking these three things, we were unsure exactly what the correct amount was, right? Because we had to go back and look at every single transaction to see timestamps that may have not been recorded, et cetera. So there's many different reasons why we might not have a completely accurate count. And there's other reasons as well, compared to tokens that were promised to advisors, tokens that were paid to advisors, tokens that may have not been paid in the end, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's many different reasons why that there wasn't a completely accurate count of exactly what was not sold, but what was actually supposed to be distributed after the token sale. And since you went back on the Bird program and started to vault instead, how are you going to burn the correct amount if it's illegal? The Bird, well, they would be vaulted. The vault is there with the eventuality that we hope we'd be able to burn those tokens. But if this 5 years or 4 years expires, 4 years and change expires, and there's still no clarity, and I believe at that point there will be clarity, we will vault them to infinity. So they still will be, they won't be in the circulating supply. I'm really just annoyed, and it's been more than a year and nothing has happened with that correction. Yeah, I get that you're annoyed. I don't see how it affects anything, really. I see that, it's annoying to the fact that there isn't a final outcome yet, per se, but at the end of the day, they're still not circulating. So it doesn't necessarily affect anything, whether it comes to liquidity, whether it comes to underlying price, nothing. It's basically, I don't know, just an accounting issue, basically. When will ad campaign start? 6 my bad. We planned for March. I think we're generally still on that target. March into April, essentially, because we still have to roll out. We have started some test campaigns. We will probably do more test campaigns during the probably beginning of March, and towards the end of March, inside of the month of March, we expect some marketing to start and then push into April. Can you please ask Kevin, that's me, why he wants to hire an internal marketing team instead of simply outsourcing to a marketing agency? That's an easy one to answer. Marketing agencies are expensive. Most marketing agencies don't go end to end. So marketing agency may create a strategy. They may charge you 25% more than you would pay to actually place ads, and they just place them for you. They add fees onto everything. We don't have a budget really for a marketing agency. Two, marketing agencies, in order for a marketing agency to really understand the tone and exactly what you're trying to do in a company, it takes time and it costs a lot of money. But the time effort, it would take them much more time than an internal team that's here with us locally that we can actually train and show and get, and they can learn our branding from the inside out. Not to mention that if we go on with the marketing, that's a one-time thing. It's much better for a company to have, internal employees, long-term perspective instead of short-term perspective. If we constantly focus on short-term perspective, then, and we have no long-term vision on what we're going to do, then what happens is every time we bring in another short-term vision, they simply reset what the first guys did and we start from scratch. And we'd like to stop kind of falling into that same cycle. Hi, Kevin. What's the plans for the next capital raise? I guess that will be inevitable this year. Is you're focused on targeting large investors, or would you consider crowdfunding? Definitely probably will fall within this year. Still focus would be, yes, on targeting large investors. Crowdfunding could be a possibility. We'd have to find the best way to do that. It's possible. I remember Brewdog and what they did. It's possible. I think we would need a unique standing point to go into crowdfunding, because now it's such a saturated field. We would need some, and I think Montenegro, tokenized securities, tokenized equity might be the way we could do that. But I don't know if we'll be fully ready to push that out by the time we start fundraising, though it could be, eventually it will happen. Equity will be tokenized. Okay, let's jump into AMA. I'm going to scroll up here. Any new updates on Chainlink from Roger here on YouTube? No direct updates. Chainlink, no. I think again, I haven't reached out to them yet, only because on the CSD side we're pushing through a few other things, and I want to get through those things before we bring Chainlink back into the equation. And we had discussions actually with the dev team, and at least for what I was thinking for corporate actions, kind of came to the decision that it might not make as much sense as I thought it would. And we started to brainstorm on what else we could do with Chainlink. And there was a few options, a few things that we wrote down on paper. None of those have been fully explored yet. Next meeting in Riga with these guys, and I don't mean Chainlink, I mean our dev team, will be next Thursday. And this will be probably one of the topics we bring back up. So we'll see where we get in the brainstorming. Why is it that Kevin explains crypto vote being internalized? I like that weekly poll. Bring it back on Twitter. Yeah, well, I don't know if it's completely internalized. It might be. Well, I guess even if it was on Twitter, it's kind of still somewhat internalized to Twitter follows, right? But yeah, we can tag Oliver on that one, see what he says. Any news regarding bringing on the CSD devs to work on CoinMetro? In negotiations right now. Hopefully next week we will have an advanced stage of negotiations, and I can comment more on that. Cosmine 2020, I guess that was a North Korean comment. Nice, crispy. When are you planning to start major marketing? Already answered that one. Jens at Denmark, can you share a few insights? What is behind the recent and sudden growth in daily volume? I already shared those insights. If you missed it, market makers coming online, revamping of having only VWAP top of book, meaning volume weighted average price for a larger number of assets top of book, meaning the price you see wasn't just one Bitcoin, it was multiple Bitcoins, which means that the spread was wider. We reformatted that into several tiers, making the top tier much less spread, and added in those market makers, which eventually, plus that with the sudden pop in Bitcoin where everybody thought, oh my God, Bitcoin hit 10K, it's going to 1 million next. We're all the smartest people in the world, which obviously brought in a bit more money as well. Any ideas on the number of users on the exchange this week? Definitely has increased by several multipliers. That's for sure. As far as the number of users per day, which also would be correlated, I think, a lot, obviously, to the bullish sentiment around right now around crypto. Also, I believe it's tied in directly to the fact that market makers and spread being lessened. So those three things may definitely play a role. Any new CM hires? We have some offers going out this week for compliance. We have some new support people coming on in March, probably compliance as well in March. We have a new treasury officer in the office who started, I think, just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, or the day before. I don't know. It's been a long week, but just recently. And obviously we're still hunting marketing, and I think we're gonna finally have an offer on the table to at least 1 or 2 people for marketing over the next week or so, 10 days. So yeah, hires are coming in. That's the point. Is the integration of Simplex into the dashboard still due this month? As far as the due date, not sure how we've managed that. New dashboard is definitely on the February chopping block. So I think the integration of what we would call the one-page exchange is February into March. So probably first week of March is probably now, but you may see it, you probably will see it, or at least a version of it on the sandbox or the demo sometime in February. What are your thoughts on the halvening? Do you think it could be a catalyst for getting back to 20K? No, I do not. I think the halvening, it sounds like a fucking horror movie. I think at the end of the day, people overestimate what it means. And I think they underestimate the fact that, look, it's one thing if this would happen out of the blue, like no one knew it was going to happen. And then all of a sudden on a Friday afternoon, it's like, oh my God, the Bitcoin reward just got cut in half. That would probably cause an immediate, actually, no, it would probably be counter. It would be counter to exactly what you would think. It would probably cause an immediate crash in price. And then eventually over the weekend and into the next week, you'd see a new high watermark, at least according to Friday pricing in this example. However, here, it's definitely already known. It's known when it's going to happen. We're already at prices. Look, guys, $10,000 US for a Bitcoin. Give me an argument on why that's cheap. A real argument, not like there's only 21 million Bitcoins, bro. You know, don't give me that horseshit argument, because there's also Satoshis. There's way more. There's 100 million times 21 million Satoshis. That's a much bigger number, right? So you can't, it's fractional. One of the biggest advantages of crypto and tokens in general is that they're fractional. They can be fractionalized. But somehow we forget that when we quote 21 million Bitcoin. So, give me a reason. Why is it cheap? Why should it go higher? Is there really a fundamental reason why Bitcoin should cost more? The mining costs are roughly 3 to 4K on average around the world. Obviously, if you take out the more cheaper places to mine, maybe that average goes to 6K. But, why should it be more expensive? Just because it's so-called scarce? Is it really scarce? When you knock it down to a Satoshi? I think most people that make arguments about Bitcoin going to these, first of all, they're looking at charts and assuming that the past will play itself out in the future. And that is the dumbest thing you can do. Charts do not tell you where price will go. They do not tell you where the market is heading. They tell you where the market was. That's it. Everything else is speculation. The only reason that some indicators seem to work is because they are commonplace and standard in mostly retail trading, and retail traders follow the same cues, which is why they seem to quote unquote work. But they do not indicate price in the future, right? So I think that the halvening itself will have no effect, but the perception of the halvening up to the halvening, I would expect prices to fall, getting closer to the halvening, and then probably recover and possibly go slightly higher on the momentum of the recovery. But it all depends on the flow, the capital flow after the drop and into the recovery, just like it does for any other type of asset, et cetera, et cetera. 550 XCM went to 50K, 50 million. What happened to those? Are they already on the market, all unlocked? It's quite a big amount compared to the public pool of XCM. No, they're vested. Half of those have been unvested. Half were unvested after 6 months. The other half was vested after 1 year, which just happened. In February, 6 months from now, another 25%. Just according to, it's exactly what the white paper said. 25% gets unvested, or vested, I guess, after every 6 months. The majority of those are held by myself and the other majority shareholder. And so no, they're not. You could say that they're in circulating supply, but for the most part, they don't move. You mentioned you're talking with the SEC soon. Is it possible that CM will get a sandbox set up? It's possible, yes. We will go there to talk about Ignium for the most part, the CSD, but obviously CoinMetro will be talked about specifically for the sandbox in the fact that it would be needed to show how the actual complete market loop functions. Looks like there's some MM going on PRQ. Yep, there is. So yeah, good to see that. So let's say Murcko XCM goes to the moon on a moon mission. Will tiers get repriced, or are they more of an early adopter benefit? Maybe increasing the benefit to those locked tiers would definitely get adjusted if XCM once XCM increases in value. That's for sure. These tiers are generally based on the current average price. Is your Louis Vuitton scarf in your Louis Vuitton scarf? Is my money? No, that's actually not true. This was actually a gift. But everything I purchased, by the way, my salary at CoinMetro is €700 a month. So I guess I could buy a scarf with that, but then I wouldn't eat. So no, I have my own money that I've earned over the years from doing many other things, has absolutely not tied to anything that CoinMetro does, has raised, or anything. So it is my money. I've been in the finance business now for 2 decades. And I've done well for myself. So it has nothing to do with your money, that's for sure. Is there a timetable to when retail traders will be able to do limit orders on mobile? There is the adding of the Express platform into mobile. Yes, there is a time frame for that. Right now it's scheduled for the month of March, I do believe. Fergus County, Fergus Courtney, sorry. No, Kevin, don't be a realist. You'll drive retail trade. Too much transparency. Yeah. Sorry for being a realist. Look, I'm not saying Bitcoin won't go up in value. Obviously, more people that buy it, the more value. But I think people are just irrational, right? Bitcoin has proven that it's outpaced, the Dow and all these other investments. That's true. And to be honest, as a speculative asset, it will probably always outpace. But that doesn't mean every year it's going to outpace. It's still a speculative asset. You still shouldn't put all your eggs into one basket, and you shouldn't expect to see historic returns happen in the future. That goes with any asset, not just Bitcoin. When is the next IEO? Not necessarily. I'm not really focusing on that right now, to be quite honest. I think we need to build out that CoinMetro Direct platform, bringing on new devs and getting through our current dev backlog. One of the things we will do after that is get the full CoinMetro Direct platform online, the one we envisioned initially, which makes most of these operations autonomous. And then I think we can really start to drive the IEO market, especially inside the Montenegro sandbox as well. BitMEX says no rollback or refunds after XCM flash crash. What would CoinMetro do in similar circumstances? I guess XCM there is a typo. BitMEX says no rollback or refunds after flash crash. You'd have to expand it. Flash crash in what? Like if there's a flash crash on Bitcoin. Now, when it comes to any regulated enterprise in finance, if there's a flash crash and it can be explained by way of legitimate orders inside of the order book, we don't do anything. If it happens because of a glitch on our side, something that we caused to happen that is our fault, then we should. Now, I'm not saying we're obligated, because it depends on exactly what happened. In certain circumstances, regulation can obligate a financial service provider. But my morality bell rings and says that if it's our fault, we should compensate. That would be my answer to that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that would be in every circumstance. How do money out of market makers make money then if they're just there to provide sell-by orders without the intention to move price? Do they count on retail clients making bad trades and profit off of that? Well, there's a lot of ways market makers make money. First of all, they're not making markets on one market. Usually they make markets on multiple markets, which in this type of market creates arbitrage opportunities. They also have to know when to hold orders and when to let them go. For instance, you may buy Bitcoin today, hold it for 6 weeks, Bitcoin drops in 6 weeks, and you lose money when you exit the trade. They shouldn't be holding that trade for 6 months, for 6 weeks. They should be in and out of that liquidity fast, but preferably within seconds. So that means that their only goal is to make sure either on the same price feed or on different price feeds, they are first of all, they're making a spread, right? That's one. Second of all, they may be inducing some other way to make money. Maybe they're getting paid a commission, maybe they're getting paid a service fee, whatever. But they're making money on multiple, they have multiple revenue streams, let's put it that way. And they have to calculate when to hold and when not to hold. If they want to speculate, even they can win and you can win at the same time. How's that possible? Again, you open a Bitcoin long today, you hold it for 6 weeks, they hold it for 3 weeks. They cash out with a win, you cash out 6 weeks later where they take the other side of that trade for a loss. So it's just simply about strategy. And if a market maker is filling orders, and especially between themselves, which is wash trading, to try and push price in one direction, that isn't market making. That's either wash trading, it could be front running, it could be spoofing. Spoofing, actually, the orders wouldn't get filled. Spoofing actually occasionally happens here on CoinMetro. If you notice on the XCM order book, a lot of people try to do spoofing. They don't necessarily do it all that, let's say, by the book, but it does happen. So anyway, market makers make money by strategically being able to get in and out of orders between different markets and making money on multiple revenue streams that has to do with filling those orders. That's the point. Will there be like a small presentation for the community on how the CSD process actually works, or is it little too early for that? We could do that if anybody's interested. I mean, I guess we could probably do like a little webinar or something. If people are interested, I'm willing to do it. It's not necessarily planned because it's not necessarily a CoinMetro direct linked business. Definitely when we get into Montenegro, I guess it would make sense to have some kind of like, this is how CoinMetro operates. And obviously we'd have to explain about the CSD as well. That might make sense for sure. But I'm willing to do it. That's the point. Do you know how many accounts there are on CM now? Accounts, like 15,000. Active accounts is a different number, but accounts like 15,000. Actually, depending on how you define accounts, because we definitely, if you talk about just email in a database, then it's over 50,000. Is next tram still within the next few days? I know that there's a private tram that's planning to go public, and I know there's another tram that's supposed to come online from a similar group that's running the current public tram. And I do think, yeah, that's scheduled over the next coming days, yes. And what was the 500K euro tram Oliver was referring to? You have to ask Oliver about that one. XRP flash crash, my bad. Okay, XRP. So yeah, again, each circumstance is different, so it depends. If it's our fault, I would say that in most cases where it's our fault and there's no other mitigating circumstances, yes, we would compensate because that's just the right thing to do. If it's not our fault, even and we can prove that, then that changes. Again, there still may be a commercial gesture, not our fault, but we make a commercial gesture to our clients. What that commercial gesture is would depend on the circumstances. With the powerhouse that is Ripple and XRP increasing every day, will all these remittance corridors opening? Has CM started anything yet with Ripple? I haven't gotten in contact back again with Ripple. I think we're close to a time where we're going to do that. I do think they're making advances, and that's great for Ripple. They still haven't made any advances in the Baltics, as far as I know. And yes, I still think we have a few things I want to get through before we start focusing on other avenue. This payment institution license that we're doing is a great time to do it. So I think right around the time we make the submission of this payment institution license to the FSA would be a great time to step back in with Ripple. They also make money on spread. That's correct. Like I said, that's one of their revenue streams. Jen's again, could you remove the cheap scarf and show the real value below? Sure. Well, I would, but it's kind of cold in this office, to be quite honest. I mean, and it's not because we can't pay the heating bill. I mean, it's because I have a heater right here. It's on like 5, but the heat basically is hot a half a millimeter away from the heater, and then further out it's not. But there you go. I'll spread it so you can see that. There you go. A question you missed here. So let's say XCM goes on the moon mission with tiers get repriced. No, I answered that one simply saying that yes, the tiers would be repriced. Right now, that tier value is based on average current value of XCM. Any idea when new tokens will be listed? Q1, Q2. We're waiting. One of the things, so LHV will be in our offices for this audit, hopefully 25th of this month. After that audit, I think we'll get a clear direction on their self-assessment guideline. And at that point, we'll be able to check to see. Now, it makes sense to list more things if people will trade them and we can actually get liquidity behind them. So the process may not be so much faster, but at least we'll be able to streamline the process of once we agree to list something, we can list it almost immediately. Can you give us any insight into new XCM utility coming soon? That's an Oliver question as well. XCM utility, Oliver, I can see him. He's sitting there just waiting for you guys to tag him in Telegram about XCM utility. Like literally just sitting there waiting for it. He's praying to God, all of them, every God, that somebody tags him right now and asks about XCM utility. So please, it's Friday, guys. Make his day. Don't leave him hanging. Sorry, I had fallen asleep. Thanks. Appreciate that. When QNT market makers. So that's in the process right now. I heard a conversation over my ear over here between finance and actually Oliver as well about QNT. I think there was an idea of how to do it, and then that idea changed a bit. But anyway, in process. So the old famous Soon trademark. By the way, guys, I own a company now in Hong Kong called Soon Limited. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Soon. All right. Anybody else? We're closing in on the hour. Show us slowly but surely. Will you do panel interviews with Box Live again, or is that thing of the past? Well, they don't have their actual. Now what they're doing is they've taken actually some of the AMAs. I guess they use more of the market news section and placed it into their live show that they do once a week. They simply don't do the same. They don't have the same type of programming. So they do post on Twitter, for instance, my Kevin Explains Crypto things and stuff like that. They do that quite regularly. I think they're actually hunting for some capital to actually re-expand their programming. And I expect when they do that, we'll be invited back on. But as of right now, they simply are just aggregating programming from around the web. When are we going to become rich? Well, you could change your name to Richard, and then I don't know how long that process takes where you are. It can be quite cumbersome in some countries. In Estonia, I think it's actually quite easy to change your name. Maybe I'm wrong, but what volume XCM price do you expect end of Q2, end of year? Oh, a speculation question. I don't expect. I don't like to say I expect, right? The goal for Q1 was 500K. We've hit that. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to have it as an average, but we hit it on a day, so we've hit that. We have Q2, I think, posted in Telegram. We want to see 1 million, right? That just seems like we doubled it, which seems kind of lazy. Again, volumes isn't what I'm most interested in because, to be honest, from a revenue standpoint, most of our revenues are not made directly from exchange volume. Now, when you add in margin volume, that obviously changes the equation, that's for sure. But it's about adding more services, and it's about being able to make money on those services as well. But I do expect volume to continue to increase. As far as XCM price, it is correlated to volume, that's for sure. But the full correlation isn't really in play yet. I think that will happen over time. I would expect as we get more services on board, more clients on board, more people interested in actually locking in and getting into those rebates, obviously that's going to induce more demand, which will induce higher prices on XCM. I don't want to give a number because, to be honest, I think giving numbers is silly. Look, I come from a trading background. I traded for quite many years. From fundamentals to reading charts, etc. I can tell you that I know a lot of people like to talk about their trading prowess, but trading, looking at a chart doesn't tell you where a price is going to be. Fundamentals will tell you a lot more, but fundamentals aren't an exact science either, right? So anyway, I do think we're definitely going in the right direction. I don't think anybody can argue that. Can you get me a video tour of the office sometime and see the real workers? Sure, Jeff. I'll see if we can get that done for you. Why not? Staking as a service, is that in the pipeline? Is ADA on the list? ADA was on our main list, that's for sure. Staking is something, like I said, I think there's a small risk there from a regulatory standpoint. It's one thing I'd like to get an opinion on, which is something that we should dig into. And I think we will definitely dig into. Right now, BitGo is what we use for most of our, where we hold most of our assets. We are moving at some point here shortly. We're gonna be moving all Ether-based tokens onto our own Ether wallet system. When we do that, it will allow us to do staking at our own discretion. Right now with BitGo, we can only stake what they stake, and they do stake right now 2 assets that we don't list. So once we do move over to our own Ether ecosystem, it'll give us the ability to look into that further. I want to see Oliver's forehead and compare it with yours. Yeah, well, you could ask him for a selfie of his forehead. I'm definitely balder, so I don't know if that makes any difference. I guess that probably does make your forehead bigger when you're bald. I mean, if I had a hairline, down to here, then obviously forehead would be shot, so. Plus, where does the forehead end, right? Does the forehead end like here, or does it actually end where the hair ends? Because eventually that fucking hairline is going to be back here, So does that mean the forehead gets bigger? Does that mean the prophecy has actually come true? I mean, what is, I don't know. I mean, it gets kind of confusing, right? Then people are going to start putting tinfoil hats on if I keep going down this road. Where and when? Where can we easily see the volume of XCM? I see 1.5 million in 24 hours on the Express trading page. So right on the front page, actually, you can watch the ticker and see XCM volume. You can also see it, as you said, on Express, right inside the Market Watch window. That seems pretty easy to me. There was some external websites as well. There's one, I think, XCM Price or something like that. There's another one that's CoinMetroStats.CF. I think that one's been down for a few days. Whoever's managing that one, seriously, man, like I used to look at that thing all the time. Like, get it back and running. What are you doing? Any updates on virtual IBANs? We were discussing virtual IBANs. Without the payment institution license and allowing third-party payments, they're much less sexy. But they do allow people who have an issue with their bank sending and receiving money from crypto exchanges, because that means they're sending and receiving money to themselves rather than us. So anyway, the update is that we're waiting for LHV to clarify when they'll exactly be ready. And we're waiting to see what the integration will look like on our side. We also have the ability to bring them on for another provider in the next 2 or 3 weeks. At least that's what I was told literally today. So anyway, in discussion, in the works, no exact dates yet. And we're trying to figure out if it makes sense, because we won't be able to provide all the, let's say, pros that a IBAN would give you, because we don't have that payment institution license yet. Though, like I said, it would mitigate the problem of people having to send money and receive money from a crypto exchange, because they'd be sending and receiving to accounts in their own name. Any updates on SWIFT transfers? Same conversation I had today, 2 to 3 weeks. We have one provider that'll open up for Euro and Pound SWIFT, and then we'll slowly add in additional currencies. That's the provider that was originally going to provide us with 25 currencies and had to reformat their entire correspondent banking network. And we also have, we've had a kind of a nod from LHV that SWIFT would be available, but we want to clarify that during the audit. So that just the next 2 or 3 weeks, we should have an update on that and get more clarity. In the meantime, we've sent out applications and been discussing with several other service providers that can provide SWIFT transactions, one of which we've gone through the compliance process, and we're waiting for a final account approval. So we may actually have news before 2 or 3 weeks, but it's something that we're definitely working on. Can you check on the Telegram too? If you type in at price, it'll give you XM price. Thank you, Musab. Good point. Will you get dollars this year? Definitely the goal. It's always the goal, right? Dollars, again, like I've always said, not the easiest thing in the world. I do think between one of these providers we're in talks with right now that we're going through the compliance process provides USD. Now, will they provide USD to our specific business? Remains still a question that's in the air. The other provider will eventually have USD. Will they be able to provide it to us? Again, question in the air. That payment institution license, however, I can almost guarantee you will allow us access to USD, even from day one. So that's definitely going to help us. But yes, I would say yes, in the next 10 months, we should have a solution for USD, and hopefully sooner rather than later. For dollars, can you not just use the same provider that Coinbase uses? Maybe not. I mean, just because someone's in the same industry, a lot of time with banking is old boys club. And what I mean by that is if I have a relationship personally with HSBC, let's say, and HSBC doesn't accept crypto exchanges, but I've been a personal client of theirs for years, high net worth client, and I open in a business that's crypto related, I guarantee you that initially I will get an account with them for my crypto company, because there's a personal relationship already with the bank, and they know me. And the risk falls normally on the UBO and their activity, not so much on the company, because the company is a reflection of the shareholder, UBO, and the guy who runs the operations. So Coinbase may have an account somewhere based on the old boys club, which we might not be able to gain access to. Coinbase also does significantly more transaction volume, which means that the bank is making significantly more money, which means the risk is outweighed potentially by the amount of money that they're able to earn and then spend to make sure that their risk is mitigated. So just because someone else does something doesn't necessarily mean we can do it. We could probably gain access to certain providers. Coinbase couldn't, for the reason that they're too big. Because if a bank is risk adverse to crypto, even though an established player may make sense to, and a common sense, it may mean that it's just too much volume for them, and they believe that is too much risk. Barclays dropping Coinbase can be an instance, a reason for this. It could be many other reasons, but I guess you get my point. I don't think CoinMetro Stats.cf will come online again. Creator sold all his XCM and left a long time ago already. Okay, all right, well, too bad. It was a nice place to check stat. It wasn't the prettiest site, but I had it. I didn't have it bookmarked, but it was definitely one when I typed coin, that was one of the things that came up, you know, in my on Google Chrome and stuff. So okay, are you close on being able to supply some CM merch? Yep, getting there. Waiting for some final designs. Like the designer, I like the design. The guy who makes these things, I like the guy. He's just like, talk about soon. I mean, literally every time he gives me a deadline, he always has an excuse, and he tells me he needs 48 hours, and then 6 days later, he tells me 48 hours again. And that happens at least 3 or 4 times every time, and then finally I get it. Obviously, it's not like an urgent thing, so I don't really press all that hard either. But I'm waiting for these last final designs. I will make some additional, one print to see how the print comes out. We're going to make some adjustments, get some QR codes on all these guys, and a few other things, a few other cool things. And then I think we'll be ready for the first large run. Only delusional extremists are left at this point from ICO days. Delusional club represent. Yeah, well, that's definitely not true. There's definitely some new guys in the mix. But look, I like I say every week, I say, I fully, can't thank you guys enough for still being here. Obviously, I know, being inside and still being here is one thing. Being outside and still being here is another. I think it's a testament to our transparency. That's one. I think it's a testament to the fact we've been doing the right things. That's two. But it's also a testament to you guys, right? It's not easy to hang around, right? I mean, look at this guy. One guy creates CoinMetro Stats.cf, and then just gets dismayed, sells all his XCM, right? Even though he put in all this effort and everything. So the people that are still here, man, that's a testament really to your guys and just, kind of staying in there and showing that you believe in us, which obviously is we thank you. Everybody here thanks you guys for that. That's for sure. Wholeheartedly. All right, guys, thanks again. We're over an hour now, so I'm gonna cut it out. I got a bunch of stuff I got to get done, and hopefully I'll get some of it done. How many exchanges are still left at ICO at the same time as CM? I don't know. I don't have a list off my head. The only list I have off the top of my head is the one that are closed. So yeah, I would say almost none is probably a good answer to that. Thanks, Jens. Thanks, guys. I fully appreciate it. Anyway, I'm going to run. I'm going to say what I always say. Spend some time with friends and family. Don't look at prices. Buy some XCM. Dude, by the way, guys, happy Valentine's Day, right? Now, when I was a kid, Valentine's Day was supposed to be about, just star-crossed, like lovers, right? Like you and your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, husband, wife. Now it's like Friends Day as well, That for some reason, I guess not enough people were buying things for their significant other. So Hallmark had to make sure that, it was also made about friends. This way, if you don't get a gift, man, not only do you not have a significant other, you don't even have any friends, which just, probably makes you completely depressed, which makes you buy something for yourself. It's pretty genius. Anyway, so it's Valentine's Day, guys. Friends and family, the best gift. You guys know what the best gift is? XCM, man. I mean, seriously, how could there be a better gift? Anyway. So jesting aside, have a great weekend. Make sure you spend some special time with somebody today, even if that somebody is yourself. You know, get a nice mirror, stare at yourself in the mirror, make like googly eyes at yourself. I don't know, do whatever you want to do. Yeah, anyway, have a good weekend. Tag me in Telegram if you have a question. That's at Kevin Murcko, no space. You can tag me the same thing on Twittergram. Jesus Christ, I just made a new social media network. I'm going to become a billionaire now. Twitter or Telegram or Instagram, any of these grams, social media. I know I sound like I'm fucking 80 years old right now, but tag me where you want to tag me. I'll respond. Have a great weekend. Talk to you guys again on Friday. Literally talk at you guys, I guess, next Friday. I'll be in Montenegro early in the week. Let you guys know how that goes next Friday with our little workshop. And I now have an internal deadline to submit our freaking sandbox app on the 21st. So next week, guys. So we should have an update on that as well. So talk to you guys then. Cheers. Thanks a lot again. We wouldn't be here without you guys. So we appreciate you. Cheers.